Hey there, welcome here. Do you sometimes look at what everyone else is doing in order to follow that or do the exact opposite? In this video, I would like to discuss why this is not such a helpful default. We are very social beings. It is deeply stamped into our DNA that being part of a group and getting support will promote our well-being. When we're young, basically all we do is follow the crowd. We learn from others by copying them. Following the crowd and being conform with what the crowd is doing is, in a way, a very natural part of being human. It saves energy, it provides safety, and sometimes it can help us make more rational choices. Especially in situations that are uncertain, we look at what others are doing to find out what we want to do. But even when we notice that what others are doing is wrong, we still have the impulse to do what they are doing. That's how deeply this is stamped into our DNA. If you look at the three lines in the right square, which one of those three lines is the same length as the line in the picture on the left? It's very obvious that the answer is line number 2. In this study, which I will explain immediately, the difference between the lines was always at least 3/4 of an inch. That means it was well visible. And when people were asked these kinds of questions alone, they only made mistakes about 1% of the time because it's such an easy task. But if there are 7 people in the room that give wrong answers, let's say they all said it's line number 1 or line number 3, probably more likely in this scenario, then the person who is asked, what do you think, which of these lines corresponds to the line in the left picture, they will actually also say it's line number 3. So the quota of making a mistake goes up from 1% to 37%, just because of the influence of the group. The people in the study gave different reasons why they followed the group. Some of them really did think they were just wrong and the others were right. Others told the experimenters they didn't want to mess up the experiment, so they just followed the crowd. Whatever the reasons we perceive, we have this strong inclination to do what everyone else is doing. And interestingly enough, 25% of the participants in this study actually stayed with their own opinion and perception. No matter what the group was saying, they said what they saw as truth. So there are some people who have learned not to be conform when they see that what the group is doing is wrong. By the way, this is a very classical experiment from the 50s done by a researcher called Asch, and it just shows how strongly we are wired to be conform. And like I said, this actually also has benefits, but it also has risks. What if the group is going into a direction I don't want to go in? What if they're obviously doing something that I don't perceive to be the correct choice for myself? So as we go through life, we learn to think for ourselves, to make our own decisions and make up our own minds. However, here we can also overdo it. We can go into the extreme opposite of having this modus operandi or way of living that whatever everyone else is doing, I will do the exact opposite. I'm not going to do something just because everyone else is doing it. Ever done that? Ever not read a book or not seen a movie just because it was super popular and everyone was watching it or reading it? And then maybe you got it as a gift, read the book, watched the movie, and realized that it's actually really enjoyable, or you even learned something from the experience? Or some people go through this when they decide which job direction to go into, and they rule out anything that goes into the direction of what their parents are doing, just because that's what their parents are doing. And that this is reason enough for them not to do it. And what I'd like to highlight here is that whatever everyone else is doing or the group that I identify with is doing is not a very helpful compass to lead me to find out what I want to do and what I don't want to do. Being different than everyone else is also not a helpful default, because the point of our orientation is then still the crowd. Our identity still changes whenever the crowd changes. It's still dependent on the crowd, just in a way of not following it. So if our point of orientation is what everyone else is doing, it doesn't actually matter if we're following or by default against it. We still haven't found our true identity. And this can be true for when we fall under peer pressure and go along with what everyone else is doing, or if we by default reject what everyone else is doing. And this is something I find helpful to reflect upon from time to time. To check yourself, am I rejecting something blindly just because a lot of people are liking it right now or doing something? Because this is actually the more subtle of the two traps. It becomes obvious to us when we go along with what everyone else is doing, because we can see that we're doing something just to fit in. But what is more subtle is if we now reject what everyone else is doing in order to just not be conform, and we don't realize that just being different and just rejecting what the crowd is doing is also not an expression of who I am and what I want. If we really want to be true to ourselves, we need our own experiences, our own knowledge, our own values and morals, and our own inner compass. Here are some thoughts that can assist you in coming to your own decisions and being true to yourself. The first thought is become more aware of what others want in a given situation and what your inner voice is telling you. Sometimes we are so used to going along with what the group wants, we don't even really realize the difference, or we realize it too late that our inner voice was actually saying something different. So become better at listening to your own inner voice and allowing it to say what it wants to say. In order to really allow ourselves to listen to our inner voice, it's helpful to know that whatever this inner voice is going to say will be okay. And even if it's different from what everyone else is thinking or saying, you know that you're going to find a way of dealing with that. Of course, it's comfortable and sometimes the easier way if you're just in true agreement with everyone, but just because that is easier doesn't mean we should stop listening to our inner voice or just jump over it and ignore it. So become more aware of that difference, just observing first of all. So then you can actually also act on that afterwards. Sometimes, for example, someone may ask us to do something and we automatically say yes, without even thinking about, is this something that I really want to do? So practice listening to your own inner voice more and just seeing the difference. Become aware that your inner voice has its own opinion and it will probably sometimes be different from what the people that are around you are thinking, and that is completely okay. And what is not okay is to stop listening to it. Another way to be true to yourself in group settings is to try to understand decisions that groups make. Why did they come to this decision? What are the reasons for that? Look at the information yourself. Gather your own information and gather it from different perspectives and sources so that you can come up with your own picture of the situation to try to understand why this decision was made instead of just going along with it and accepting it without thinking about it yourself. Another thing you can do is to value your own experience and knowledge. If we are in a group setting and we keep our own experience and knowledge to ourselves just because it's different from the consensus in the discussion at any given moment, we are actually taking away very important insights that the group might benefit from. In that way, we contribute to worse decision making. So it's very important when groups come to decisions that all perspectives are thought through. And this sometimes doesn't happen because we don't value our own experience and knowledge enough to speak about it, even when it's different. We doubt it quickly. We think, okay, well, they're all in agreement about this. Why should I say something? And that is exactly a mistake that often leads to bad decisions being made in groups. So value your own experience and knowledge, and know that even if it turns out in the end that the group will decide against this perspective, still it's important to share it and to always give that extra insight into the group. Where would we be actually as a society as a whole if everyone had always just conformed to the groups they were part of? Think of anyone from history that is important to you and what they did. And I'm pretty sure that they brought the value that they did to society because they dared to value their own experience, perspective, and to be true to their own inner compass. Also, build up the courage to stand up for your own choices by becoming aware of the fact that standing up for your own choices does not mean that you're insulting others. It also doesn't have to mean that you will become a loner, because you will actually just develop stronger friendships with people who appreciate you for your true self rather than for a false image. And last but not least, hit the subscribe button and notification bell so you can keep on being inspired by these kinds of videos in the future. Take care of yourself and dare to value your own perspective.